Hello, I wanted to just give you a couple suggestions on areas of your checkpoint that require your attention. The first is at the point of the rental expense and the purchase, and actually the payment of the last month's of rent, which is a prepaid. This transaction here is very important because it's kind of the same entry that you're going to be making in August and September, which is why we really need to address why it's not correct here. First of all, it is stated in the instructions that they pay cash. They expected $3,000 in cash at the time the lease was signed. But part of that money was advance payment and one was for the current month. You need to show the current month, which I see clearly right here. But I wanted to bring to your attention that one, accounts payable is not appropriate because we paid the bill. And secondly, we're not considering cash or the total amount of money that was paid out and the amount that was paid in advance. So that entry really needs some work. And by all means, please take a look at the chart of accounts. It's very important to understand the layout of this particular sheet because it tells you all of the accounts and the specific categories to which they relate. So there's no guesswork as to whether or not it's an asset or a liability or an expense account. And then once you know that, you know how do I increase these numbers or increase expenses, or how do I decrease them, because you know that it is in fact an asset or this is in fact an expense. So far, the entries up here look fine, but I did notice here, again, with this particular transaction, we want to note that we received the bill and haven't paid it yet. So we're not going to be crediting cash. It's very, very important to note we're not crediting cash at all. Here is another transaction I think maybe you misunderstood, but we paid $2,400. I don't see cash at all in this transaction. Number two, we can't record an expense for services or for any type of any type of event that has not incurred. We have not received the benefit of the insurance. It begins actually in August. So in this case, recording an expense for 12 months is inappropriate. So you need to remove that. Now you've got it right here. It is a prepaid, but you're not going to reduce the prepaid. You're increasing the prepaid. So you're crediting it when you should be debiting it. Also, you need to consider cash in this transaction. When I look at your August, I see similar problems here. Again, you've already incurred the expense. So all you need to do is reduce the liability and reduce your cash, which I don't see happening here. In this case, the same thing is going on. You've already incurred the expense for telephone. All you need to do is remove the obligation. Cash on here, in this case, looks good. Now, in this case, there's another transaction I think will come to my attention. I think you need to look back at this one here. I don't think this entry is correct. What I'm saying is I don't think cash is involved here. I think you're purchasing supplies on account. And if that's the case, then that's the entry you should make. However, if you are paying your vendor, then you need to remove this baking supplies, because that's basically, you've already recorded these supplies that you've already received. You just have to remove the obligation. And here, I don't know why you have this dollar amount of $1,600. It seems very, very incorrect. So I think in this case, on the 15th, you should be recording a debit to expense and recording a credit to payable. I just have a question with the dollar amount. So go back and check that. And the same thing I mentioned here, you're paying your rent every single month in cash. Payable should not be in this transaction at all. This entry looks good. This entry looks good. This one here looks good with the exception of the dollar amounts. I don't know where these dollar amounts are coming from, so you need to go back and check your instruction sheet for the correct amounts. Again, telephone expense is fine, but you want to record the payable because you have yet to pay that bill. And I'm going to just give you the same thing here. Again, this entry looks to be omitted, which is not correct. Here, you need to make certain that you're recording a removal of the liability. And here, these entries here seems to be omitted. Don't know why. If you have some questions or problems with these entries, let me know. These amounts here look incorrect, so I'm going to highlight these amounts. So these entries have not been done, and I want you to attempt them. And the reason why I say I want you to attempt them because I want to see if you understand what actually is happening and how to apply the principles here. So I don't want to give you any more detail than that other than to say that these entries have not been recorded. This is the same error that you've had in July and in August. So the same rule apply here. We have to show that we paid it in cash. So I think this is a good attempt at the journal entries. It is very important, however, to look at every single one of the entries that I've identified that contain errors using the chart of accounts, and also what you've learned in your textbook. Go through these transactions very, very carefully, and you're going to discover many of them are telling you the two accounts that are affected. You just have to make certain that you read it, and I would suggest reading it out loud. And the reason for that is so that you can hear what those words are saying, and it will be a better way to identify the two accounts that are involved. Once you've identified the two accounts that are involved, you can then say, okay, am I dealing with an asset? Am I dealing with a liability? And what's happening to these assets or liabilities? And then using your knowledge of increasing assets with debits and decreasing assets with credits, you are better able to put these transactions together in the correct format. I hope this is helpful to you. By all means, reach out to me with any questions or problems you might have.